Thank you for having me, and thank you, Macmillan Education, for inviting me to do this webinar. And thanks everyone for joining this webinar, wherever you are, whatever time it is. So I'm just going to start by talking about the why behind this topic. And I'm going to talk about my career a little bit. Like Will said, I started teaching 15 years ago. Just wanted some pocket money. I loved it, and had my first lessons. I did CELTA fairly soon after my very first lessons, and then I loved that. And in 2013, I became a CELTA trainer, and I loved working with teachers. And I thought I want to continue. And that's how I became a Delta trainer 2 years after that. And that's also the year when I became a manager. And all of those steps are what we would call vertical growth in the modern world, which means that I'm progressing up the career ladder. And in 2018, I organized my very first conference for teacher trainers from around the world, which was kind of part of my job as a manager, but it required a totally different skill set. So if we look at this point in my career, that's where I started developing horizontally. And then 2020, of course, COVID happened, and we all had major changes in our lives. And in 2021, I decided I wanted to move to ed tech and work in IT with technology, which is what I'm doing now. I'm working for a language learning platform where there are courses for self-learning, but I am managing a team of teachers who work worldwide 24/7. So it's still some sort of management, but it's just a different context. It's online, it's worldwide, and it requires a different skill set as well. So all of those little changes that happened to me, I'm sure you can relate to some of those. And let's look at our careers. What about you? What major change have you experienced as a teacher? If you could just send your ideas into the chat, and let's have a look at what you have. I've given you one example. I started teaching online when COVID happened, actually a little earlier than that. But I think had to move online fully with COVID. Let me have a look at what you have. Online teaching classes to companies, okay, that's a different thing. AI, good. I like that you mentioned that. Teaching with AI, opened my own school. Wow, okay. Virtual teaching, yes. Did your CELTA online? Ooh, nice. Okay. CELTA, some people are mentioning CELTA as a change, and I love that. I'll give you a couple more examples. If you've been teaching for a while now, you probably remember those moments when we had to stop or gradually stop using paper books and move to ebooks, probably supplement our paper books with ebooks. There was a point in my career when I had to start preparing my students for computer-based exams rather than paper-based exams. And that also meant a different skill set. That meant reading from the screen rather than from paper. AI, of course, and we all have to deal with AI-generated writing. But the other thing is our students are already using AI for work. So we might have to teach them to use AI as well. And we could potentially use it to generate materials and lots of other things. And, you know, little things like teaching shorter lessons, because in the busy world, students can't commit to 2-hour lessons or 90-minute lessons. And they ask for shorter lessons. I don't know if that's the experience you have, but that's what I've discovered in the past 2 years. And, problems with attention span, we can't stay focused for a long time and stuff like this. So there are lots and lots of things happening in the world. And a lot of those things are not the things we are preparing ourselves for or the things that we are expecting. And it's always been like this, but right now the world is accelerating and the change is accelerating. If somebody tells you that your office life will look like this in 10 or 20 or 30 years' time, don't believe them. It's probably a bit too early for this. But if they tell you that your office life will not look like this in 10, 20, 30 years' time, don't believe them either, because they're probably wrong. There will be elements of this, we just don't know about it yet. And the appearance of robots in a language classroom will mean that we have to adapt to this, and it will require a different skill set from us. There's a lot of research, especially at workplace, into the skills that we need and the skills that we're developing. And one recent survey shows that nearly half of the respondents say that they will probably need to learn a new skill for their current job within the next 6 months. What it means is that I'm a teacher and I know how to teach, I know how to use Zoom and stuff like that. And as a teacher, I will probably need to learn something completely new within the next 6 months. For instance, how to automate lesson reminders for my students, which is one thing I had to do in my job. And there are lots and lots of other things. Why does this happen? Because there are elements of our world which cause massive disruption, massive change in different contexts. And if we look at this chart, we'll see that there are 2 periods of time, 2 time frames, where there are things which have impacted the world in the past 6 to 12 months, such as COVID or remote work, and things which will have a lot of impact on our life in the next 2 years. And you'll see that the leaders in this category are AI, of course, automation, which I've already mentioned a couple of times, yes, skills shortages, different consumer behavior and stuff like this. So in general, what's happening in this world is that a lot of digital skills are becoming assumed for most professional jobs. For instance, in the past, as a teacher, I did not have to know a lot about computers or designing slides, or I didn't have to use all those fancy tools such as Zoom or Miro and stuff. These days, that's already assumed. That's a default thing. However, the things that are getting more and more valued in the workplace are more human-centric skills, such as critical thinking, leadership skills, analytical reasoning, and stuff like this. And they are skills which change less. I love the quote from Charles Darwin, who said that it's not the strongest and it's not the most intelligent ones who will survive, but it's those who can best manage change and adapt to change. This is a very important issue in a lot of offices, in a lot of companies, how people handle change, because things change every 2, 3, 5 years. And if we look at offices, they handle this in 3 ways. Very often it's hiring a new team or just replacing some people from their staff with the new members. But there are two more things which are getting increasingly popular. That's upskilling, or thinking about the skills we have now and upgrading them or making them better. And reskilling, which means developing a new skill or learning to use a new tool. And there are so many things in this world that sometimes we decide that we want to learn this particular skill, or I decide that I want to learn a particular programming language to complete tasks faster. But then it only stays relevant for a year or 2 or 3, and I have to learn something again from scratch. And it makes me think that it actually makes me believe in this. As teachers, we really need to develop the lifelong learning skills in our students. And ideally, if we can, love for learning, because this is what they'll have to continue doing throughout their lives. What skills should we prioritize when we work with our learners? There's a research which says that there are skills which continue to be relevant and continue to be the same for a long time. Say, if you take the next 5 years, analytical thinking and critical thinking will more or less remain the same. Say 86% of the skill will be the same. If you learn it now, it will still be very relevant. Digital capabilities, same. Leadership skills, same. Technical skills and interpersonal skills are still very important, but you can see that they will be changing quite a lot. So what do we do about it? When we think about what it is that we're spending time on in the language classroom, I think we should be asking ourselves 3 questions. Are the skills we're teaching more durable or more perishable? And we'll look at this terminology in a minute. Are those skills transferable across roles, jobs, and industries? Which means that if I learn this skill now, can I use it later if I go into a different industry, if I take on a different role? And are the skills in demand? And will they be so in the future? Because it may be a durable skill, but it may no longer be very needed. Let's go back to the concept of transferability. And in very simple words, that's a skill that you can use in all jobs, no matter what your job title is or your field is. And I like to think about planning as an example of a transferable skill. So if I am a teacher and I know how to plan my lessons, it means that I have the skill of planning developed. And when I become a manager, it will be easier for me to learn how to plan the month, professional development activities, which Bahar was talking about, and other things, because I have the concept of planning. I understand the need for planning. So the format will differ, of course, and that's what the perishable thing is. But the durable part of it is I understand the need to plan, and I know where to start, and I know how to approach it. I've given you a list of examples of transferable skills. That's if you want to go back to this slide, which you will receive later, and if you want to look into the transferable skills a bit more. But I also want to point out that modern course books are a brilliant source of ideas for us. I've been working with lots of different course books, and the thing I love about Speak Your Mind, which is one of the course books I'm a big fan of these days, is that they incorporate those skills into the teacher's books, and we get a complete guide on how to actually help our students develop this. If we look at the first section, which is preparation or planning in a speaking lesson, it says that, we give our students a topic and we give them some time to think about that. As a whole class, we brainstorm lots of different ideas. We elicit those ideas. After that, let's give our students a minute or two to decide which of those ideas they would like to use in their own speaking. And then let them speak, of course. So if we add this little thing, it helps us show the students that before they say something, before they speak, they need to stop and think about it. And with time, if we do it once, twice, 3 times, it becomes more or less automatic. And it helps us develop this little planning or preparation skill in speaking, but it can also be transferred to writing. It can also be transferred to reading, as in before they read, they stop and they think, how am I actually going to approach this task? And, things like that. When we talk about all those skills, it's also very important to think about the concept of skill longevity. And there are 3 categories, and they're perishable, durable, and semi-durable skills. The perishable skills are those which are relevant for 2.5 years. And a lot of examples are technology skills, such as using a typewriter. So when I was a kid, my mom had a typewriter and she'd spend the evenings typing up some reports and things. And I thought, that's fancy. I want to learn how to do that and also do that in my job. And of course, by the time I grew up and started thinking about that, or even went to university, nobody needed typewriters any longer. And when I have kids, I'm not going to teach them how to use a typewriter. I think I might have to teach them how to type on a computer or an iPad, but I actually doubt it because I don't know how technology will change. There are also semi-durable skills, which have the half-life of 2.5 to 7.5 years. And they are more specific frameworks for technologies, processes, tools. A lot of computer programming languages belong to semi-durable skills, as in if you learn PHP, for instance, you probably have a job for 5 years. But if you don't upgrade your knowledge, if you don't learn and read and inquire into this area, in 5 years, you'll probably have less work because there will be new programming languages which might become more popular. It does not mean that PHP will not be used at all. There will be just less work with it. And there are durable skills, those which will stay relevant for a long, long time, longer than 7 years. And they are more abstract, more philosophical things, such as mindset, project management, communication, leadership, creativity, and lots of other things. I've actually included a slide with examples of durable and perishable skills here for you. But the point is that durable skills are more fundamental to our nature, and they are, funnily enough, more difficult to obtain. There is some correlation between durable and perishable skills, as in, I mentioned the programming language as one of the semi-durable skills, actually. So when we teach our students a programming language, or when we teach English, we probably give them a tool for some time. But if while doing this, we teach them how to learn the programming language, because there are basic principles to how it works. As in, in a foreign language, in English, there's a meta language, as in noun, verb, different categories, aspects of tenses and stuff. So if we focus on this more, we give our learners a tool for learning something on their own later. And the ability to learn a programming language is actually a more durable skill. And I really like it how modern course books address those things, both in the students' books and in teachers' books, because I'll be honest with you, when I just started teaching, I didn't have a lot of free time, and I thought, I'm gonna try and plan good lessons. I was fresh off the CELTA, and I wasn't using the teacher's book much. Whereas these days, what I do when I take a new course book series is I read through the teacher's book, all of the intersections, because they tell you about the philosophy behind the book. So I've chosen a couple of examples from Speak Your Mind, which I think is one of the best course books for developing those skills which are more durable. And I'm gonna talk about mediation first, because I find it quite fascinating. For instance, let's take a man and a woman, say John and Mary, and they are communicating, they are speaking on some everyday topic. There are things which they have in common, but there are differences between them. For instance, they speak English at different levels. One person could be C1, the other person could be B2. They have different first language. They have different jobs. So if Mary is in chemistry and she talks to John, he might not understand the specific terms she uses, so she'd have to grade her language. Different types of thinking, analytical thinking and holistic thinking. If Mary likes to think about details and has a great level of attention to detail, she'll talk about that, which could potentially annoy John if that's not his personality type. They may have different opinions. And mediation is all about taking those differences into account and actually thinking about my own characteristics less and thinking about my partner's or my interlocutor's characteristics more. As in, when I speak to this person, I'm trying to make sure that they understand everything and they find speaking to me comfortable, convenient, and things like that. This was not part of the CFR companions until 2018. And in those past 5 years, those skills have been getting more and more attention in course books, in the classroom, everywhere. If we look at a course book page, this is how it's shown there. There's a section where we think about different cultures, and there's a question about medical practices. Which of those are used in your country and how effective do you think they are? So what I would do is I would ask my students to look at those questions, those topics, and decide if this is something that's used in their country, but not say anything just yet. So have a look. Tai Chi, herbal medicines, and conventional medicine. Is this something that's used in your country? But don't tell us. Just think about that. And then you probably have an opinion about those things. So I would ask my students to look at the opinion on the screen, decide if they agree or disagree without saying anything yet. I know there will be 1 or 2 students who will say that, but you know. So have a look at this. I'll give you 30 seconds. Decide if you agree or disagree with the opinion, but don't say anything. Don't send a message yet. Now, you've probably decided. I'll give you this situation. Imagine that that speaker is attending a medical conference and you are there as well. Which of those do you think you could use if you wanted to communicate effectively with that person? And you'll see that there are examples of different functions, as in clarifying misunderstanding or miscommunication. And there are examples of the actual functional exponents to be used. And here I would go into those functional exponents with my students. We would focus on the meaning. We would look at pronunciation, would look at the form. We would probably practice them in some context. And notice that I haven't asked my students to respond and to express their opinion yet. And only after we've looked at all this, I would get them to express their opinion using the language, using the strategies, actually, not just the language, but the strategies that we've looked at. There's a couple of things that are important that we need to keep in mind when doing this. If we want to teach mediation, just like any other durable skill or transferable skill, we need to teach the strategies openly. So if we're doing this, if we're asking our students not to express their opinion, they need to understand why. And we should probably tell them right away at the beginning of the lesson. It's important to provide a lot of practice. I like to do that through drilling, through many controlled practice, as a lot of that available in course books, and as teachers, we can also do that. It's also very important to reflect on how well we use those strategies. So if we have a role play and we use those strategies, it's a good idea to then reflect, did we achieve the aim that we had? And finally, when doing all this, we're kind of shifting the focus from language as a subject. We're no longer teaching grammar or vocabulary. We're teaching the language as a tool for achieving our communication goals. I did not invent this framework. Like I said, I like to use teachers' books. And this is what I got from Speak Your Mind Level 5 teacher's book. And that's what I use in my lessons. That's the framework I follow. And I feel that it helps my students become more confident mediators. Let's also look at a simpler thing, and a simple receptive skill such as reading. Now, in the past, I loved lessons on newspapers. And, 10 years ago, I would bring in newspapers, get the students to flick through, find an article they want to read. I would ask them how they decide and stuff. But these days, that's a lot less relevant because a lot of my students will read the news online and probably on their phones on a news app. So I would still ask them to go to their app or to go online and find an article they want to read. And the mode of delivery of the news has changed. And there are things which have changed, as in, we need to turn the pages with newspapers and scroll with websites. But there are things which are still true. And that's, the topic is usually in the heading and the title. There are pictures which support the content of the article, and they're there to catch the attention, and lots of things like this. And if in the past, I asked my students a lot of factual questions, as in find the date, find the place, what does number 37 mean? These days, thanks to all the training I've had and thanks to the course books I'm using, I'm asking reflective questions or metacognitive questions. If you look at this task, again, it's from Speak Your Mind Level 5. If you look at this task, the first question you see there is, what type of text is this? And why did the author write it? And who is it aimed at? And that's how we help our students develop a more durable skill, as in, the type of text will change. And we can't teach our students to read all kinds of texts. We can't give them scientific articles from websites, magazines, because there's countless numbers. But if we tell them how to understand what type of text it is, they get a tool which helps them deal with this task. The other thing is there are lots of reflective questions here, such as how do different types of questions help you find different types of information? And what is the benefit of sharing and comparing your answers? I don't know about you, but I often had this question from my students. They often said, Kate, but why do I have to show my answers to my partner? I know everything, let's just check. And that's where we go into this. And that's where we learn about lifelong learning, scaffolding, learning from peers, and things like that. So I've stopped ignoring the course book and all the advice, the teacher's book and all the advice we get there. And these days, I'm focusing more and more on the metacognitive strategies that are shown in a lot of course books. And one final thing I wanted to go through is thinking skills, because they're also very important. Summarizing, for example, is one of the thinking skills. And in this part, you're given a text about Bitcoin, which is still quite fancy, hopefully. And you're asked to read a summary of what summarizing it is. And then you're given a text about Bitcoin and the summary. And you have to look back at the explanation of what the summary is and decide if it's a good summary or not. And I find it very helpful because by looking at an example that's not exactly very good, you can identify the flaws and see how to improve that, which is one of the final tasks in this sequence. Now, if you're familiar with Bloom's taxonomy, you know that there are higher order thinking skills and lower order thinking skills. And you know, in my research, I came across the 3 types of categories. That's understanding information, which is a lower order thinking skill, such as recalling facts or summarizing. And notice that this summarizing is still a very low order thinking skill. Manipulating information, which is somewhere in between, and analyzing and, you know, problem solving, things like that. And generating new information, which is a higher order thinking skill. And it's also our job to help our students get there with the help of our lessons. So to summarize, I noticed that focus on upskilling and reskilling is getting more and more popular in a lot of companies and a lot of workplaces, because I work with quite a lot of corporate clients. It's very expensive and very difficult to replace the people you already have. And it's always better to upskill and reskill. And in order for our students to be able to go through the process of upskilling and reskilling, we, as teachers of English, should help them get the skills needed for that. They can be durable, semi-durable, and perishable skills. And I think we should move away from teaching facts and summarizing and recalling and do more higher order thinking skills. And of course, we should always think about whether the skills are transferable or non-transferable, and make it explicit to our students. Show them that if they know how to do it in English, they potentially know how to do it in all the other languages or a lot of other languages. Now, like I said, you're going to get my slides, and I've included all the sources I used in this research in case you'd like to get more information. And I think we're going to have a couple of minutes for questions if you have any. I can see a couple. And if you want to keep in touch, if you'd like to ask me something or say something or continue this conversation, send me an email. It's kate@promova.com, and I'll be happy to chat to you about this. Will, I can see you've joined us. Do we have some time for questions?
Of course we do, Kate. Thank you so much.
Great.
What a talk. Thank you. Really,
Thanks.
really just inspiring and wise, and you sort of done more than you promised. You know what I mean? You said something, you said what you're going to do, and you've really just gone overboard in the best way. So thank you so much.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure.
Good, good. So yeah, we have had some questions.
Yeah.
So Tamar has asked two, and I think it's only fair that we ask at least one of those.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go with her first one. Tamar has asked about AI. Should you, in terms of how you approach this or introduce it as a classroom approach, I think is what she's talking about here, do you recommend confronting it head on by delineating which tasks students are allowed to use AI for and which ones they're not? And if we don't allow them to do it, for example, essay writing, are there any AI detection tools yet that we can check whether they've been using that or not?
There's several questions, and I'm a big fan of AI these days, so I'll be very happy to answer that. There are some tools. A lot of them are paid, so I don't know if I can promote them actually. And honestly, I don't remember all the tools. What I do is I take a text and I go to ChatGPT and I excuse me, I give the context as in you're a copywriter, proofreader, and you check for AI. So read this text and identify if it was written by a human being or by AI, and please explain why. So as simple as that.
Okay.
As for confronting students, it's a tricky question. I think if we simply tell them that they're not allowed to do it, it will work for a lot of students, but I don't think it's enough for those who, want to develop critical thinking, have the critical thinking. They will always ask why. So I think that there are ways to show them why they shouldn't be using AI, as in we could generate a text with the help of AI and then compare it with those texts they produce and show why their texts are much better. We can teach them how to identify texts written by AI. Also, if we generate a text and then compare it to their text. And, it kind of then becomes obvious that if you write an email with the help of AI and send it to somebody who knows what AI is, they will think, oh, great, this person has the skill. But then they will think, this person didn't really even bother. They didn't have the time to write an email for me. So, I think we need to have a conversation about it, really.
Yeah, and I think there's going to be a lot over the next few years of how things are going to be refined in terms of what people want to use AI for, and how teachers can harness it, I suppose, in their teaching.
I think so. Yeah.
There have been lots more questions, Kate, but I'm gonna stop it there, I think, because we're running already 15 minutes too late. Not anything to do with you, but just these things always happen. I don't want to take too much time today, including yours. Thank you again so much for putting this together and for this gigantic day that you're doing to share your knowledge and experience with us, Kate.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure, as always.
Thank you.
Okay, see you soon, Kate. Thanks.
Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone, for listening to this talk.
Thanks. Okay, you got me. One last thing. One final thing. Kate was talking about this course here. I'm going to ask in the chat, who, if you're on Facebook and LinkedIn, you're welcome to put this in the chat box too. Who has heard of Speak Your Mind? Who knows the Macmillan course Speak Your Mind? Renata has. Beatrice uses this book. Kelly's heard of it. Great webinar. I agree, Kateryna. Thank you. Abongile? Yeah, good. Never heard of it. I have, sorry. Good. Okay. Haven't used it yet, but I've heard of it. Great. Okay. Well, I'm going to tell you a little bit about this. It's an English language course, of course, American English. And today, Kate has shared loads of ideas aiming to help students achieve their goals in professional and personal spheres. And through Speak Your Mind, we sort of help students through whatever challenges they might face in their future. So, for example, there are sections in Speak Your Mind called Confident Communicator, and there are Follow a Pro films, for example. So it really is kind of helping students engage and interact with the professional community, but also a personal community too. So the series connects language practice to real life scenarios, gives them the skills they need to thrive, the skills that Kate has just been talking about. It prompts learners to explore about different perspectives, so helping with those critical thinking skills that Kate was talking about, analyzing information and articulating their viewpoint and proposing solutions. So talking about that Bloom's taxonomy again. And yeah, so it's a really great course if you're teaching adults and you're helping adults to integrate into maybe an English-speaking professional environment. It's happening quite a lot at the moment. I'm sure you agree. This could be the course that you use to teach them English and to teach them communication strategies.